Lauren Schaller here, and I'm reviewing Mural, and I'm desperately going to try to do this in 8 minutes. It is really, really hard. So let's go. So here, there is an education version of this application. Now you're probably wondering what this is, and I will explain that shortly. It is free for educators, but there are limits to that, and you have to complete an application. So I did not do that in the interest of time. And it's limited to 100 memberships, and I read that as students. I have more than 100 students, but I think there's other ways around that. You could just kind of let in students a little bit at a time into each time you do this, and I'll kind of explain what that means in just a second. But I signed up through just mural.co, and I did a free trial, but I could upgrade, and my free trial is limited. So I'm going to show you by going to the website what this is. It is a virtual whiteboard. So it's this big blank slate, and you can create stuff and draw stuff and move stuff around. So here's an example. On their website, and you have this grid, and the students can just like move these little sticky notes around, and that's just one example of what you can do. So as the teacher, you could have this grid here locked in place, and the students are putting their ideas around, or they're creating ideas, or they're just shifting things around. It's built for brainstorming, icebreakers, collaborative work. Here's more examples. Mind maps. So it can do all of these really crazy and interesting things. So this is my murals. These are some of these are some of the murals that I have created. And let's see, title here. What did I put in this one? I think I just messed around, and you can see it would take so long to explain to you all the different things that you can do, and it does take a little while to learn. This main idea map was actually a preset that I didn't even have to create that. And what you can do is kids can click on it, and then they can type stuff here. And you can adjust the type. I can make it a little bit bigger, and they can add their own notes there. There's drawing. You can add a sticky note of your own, and then I can move my sticky note around. I gotta click out of it, and I can move it around. I was able to import this image, and then you can move things, and then you can lock things. So I locked this so that students can't move it. There's a timer that I can use if I have an activity in here. There are all these images and things that I can add in, this text. I can have a chat box going off to the side. There's this, nope, that's not it. Here's an activity log. It shows you everything that I did, and it shows you who did it. So that's a pretty important later. There's ways to zoom. There's all sorts of stuff. But I'm going to have to move on, or I'm going to run out of time. So getting back to what I was saying, I think you've got the gist of it. This could easily be used for synchronous or asynchronous activity. So you could teach a whole class and ask them to manipulate stuff in the board. Now, it gets a little crazy if you have too many people, as you can imagine. Or you could have students asynchronously create stuff, either on their own, or they could work in groups. And as you can see, it's similar to Jamboard, and honestly, it's similar to sharing a Google Doc, really. Jamboard is apparently much easier to learn, as I figured out. I hadn't even heard of these things before, but I got to play around with it. Mural might offer more stuff. I tried this out with a co-teacher because I needed to wrap my head around what I could control and what the students could control. And it took us quite a bit, and we discovered quite a few things. You can lock things down. You can monitor what's going on with the activity log. Some things worked, some things we couldn't get to work, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to have to kind of keep clicking through all these things. It's kind of hard to control what students can do. I can summon my students to look at what I'm looking at, but they can slip out of it if they want to. There's a little issue with who can get in. Can they get into that mural whenever they want to? It takes time to learn. It's better for small groups, and it can be really overwhelming if you put too much stuff in it. So it might be best to just keep it simple if you're planning on using it. So getting to the readings, let's look at Rice, the chapter 5 that we read. Honestly, there's not much that this can't do. It really does construct a good social presence. And it also kind of depends on how you use it. I was going to say that it's not really for assessments and demonstrating mastery, but alternative assessments, absolutely. It's just not something you would give a test in exactly. So it's sharing resources, absolutely. Icebreakers, think, pair, share. They could easily fill out a chart. They could even individually create something that they can then share out. So I kind of highlighted some of the areas I think it hits on the most. You could do collaboration. They could create a model. It would be two-dimensional. They can do a digital storytelling. They could present something that they create. You could do like a silent kind of style debate. They could do presentations. And these things were all in the reading, and absolutely, I think just about everything that was mentioned, with a few exceptions, it could absolutely do. Gaming, maybe if you created a really simple game, it's built in with concept maps. And getting to the Dickers, Whiteside, and Lewis social presence model, I think honestly it hits all of these. The least maybe would be the affective association, which goes with what was said in the study, how students kind of associated this the least with actually being necessary. But I don't know that it does a strong job of creating those deep emotional connections. You'd have to work for it, but it's definitely very interactive. You can get a sense of community either as a whole class or in groups. If you make it a pre-assessment, you would much more strongly be engaging that prior knowledge. And the instructor is very involved if it's done as a synchronous class activity, but if it's going to be an asynchronous project, then, maybe just through the instructor checking in and giving feedback. The reading went on about managing the collaboration, and I think this is something you would have to be really mindful of in the mural. You would need to really get to know it well yourself first. You would need to really give a strong netiquette warning ahead of time and really carefully think about how you would monitor the activity going on within it. And again, it would need lots of time. I think that with the activity log that records what everyone does, then you are able to assess what was actually going on. You could even have the students video themselves creating. And I think you could actually, most of these assessments you could get away with. The only thing I think would be a formal test would be the only thing you really couldn't do. So how can this teach my subject science? Well, I came up with tons of things, and even, some of these particular activities that could be done in a group or a whole class, maybe if you had a small class. Even if you had a large class, you could maybe have a little block of space on the mural, and you can be like, okay, group A goes in this space, group B goes here. But if we go back to the one that I created, how to use Mural to teach science, I had some fun with this. So I imported this handout of, filling in the blanks of the parts of the microscope, and then I created these sticky notes. So the students can move the sticky note and be like, okay, this is the arm of the microscope, here's the body tube, or maybe they could create their own stickies to do that. And I could lock down this so that the students aren't accidentally moving this. So now the whole board is moving. I could have them label a diagram. So, okay, Bobby Sue, show me a biotic factor here. What are the abiotic factors? So they can move those pieces around. There's calendar templates in here. So students, if they had to find a day to present something, then you could have them pick their days, and they could just create their sticky and move their name to the day they're going to present. Another idea would be a Venn diagram. You could preload some of these, or you could have them create their own stickies and they could drag it into the area of the Venn diagram. And getting to the SEL check-in type things, you could say, okay, how are you doing today? And they could create a sticky note where that just has their name on it and be like, oh, I'm on target, I'm feeling great today, so I'm going to put myself here right on the mark. Maybe I'm feeling a little off today. Maybe Mary is like, I'm really not doing good, I'm off the mark, and Dave's like, don't even ask me. I'm way out here. So those are just some ideas on some synchronous activities, or maybe this could be asynchronous, and you could have students work on this on their own, and you could come back and see that, oh, okay, they labeled everything correctly. Make sure you pick a date and to see that they picked a date in here. Did they label everything correctly in the Venn diagram? So you could do it very easily as either asynchronous or synchronous. And thank you for listening.